Get some sun, vitamin D.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by our national parks.
What's the matter, guy? You don't have Prime? Like,
No, it was a third-party company. It was like this other company. That's how I got it for so cheap.
all right, that makes sense.
Amazon doesn't sell them for that cheap.
Yeah, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys.
Amazon Basics.
Apparently, it's supposed to be
espresso
good.
machine.
Yeah, yeah. Apparently, I bought an espresso machine for all those out of the loop, and it was like half price. It was like a $200 espresso machine. So, for all of you who are like, "Why'd you spend $100 on a coffee machine?" It's a special coffee machine. Eric and I were talking about espresso machines at the coffee shop next to the Green Bean.
Okay.
And Eric was like, "How much do you think that espresso machine costs?" And I was like, "At least $2,000."
Oh, dude, green beans is serious.
Yeah.
And I was watching the chick with like the hot water thing too, so you can instantly rinse.
Yeah, no, that thing was sick.
It was serious.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Life Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm here with Tyler.
There you go.
What's up?
Benji.
Hello.
What's going on, guys? How was your weekend?
Good. You didn't say I'm Eric, and I'm Eric.
No, I said
You
it first.
started that?
Yeah, I started with it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
How was your
And
weekend?
I'm Eric.
How was your weekend, Steve?
Steve has had a great weekend, you know.
People are gonna be so confused.
Who's the fourth guy? But no, yeah, my weekend was really good, actually. I spent it mostly with you guys.
Yeah, that's true.
Talk about bonding, because this has been good.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
A lot of work.
It's one thing having a studio, and we go around, we have like this buzz, like this is already like the second or third time it's happened. It's like, how was your weekend? Dude, you know how my weekend was.
Yeah. Yeah, we worked on a lot of projects this weekend. We worked on some upcoming projects. We worked on hardware for those upcoming projects, getting things set up and getting things working. We did some carpentry.
We did?
We did some plumbing work. None of which by code.
None of which is going to be like used for what it's used for.
Yeah. We went to Home Depot.
OSHA, if you're listening.
Yeah, we went to Home Depot and we were like, we asked the guy at Home Depot this really specific question about how to connect two pipes, and then Eric saw like, "Don't worry, we're not doing this like in a house or anything."
Yeah, because he was looking at us like,
It's not legal.
I can't give you that.
We'll talk about it. So we're building a rolling camera dolly for I guess a film project that we're all putting together.
Yeah. So really what this platform allows is for a camera to be on a tripod, and then this platform will slide back and forth so that it gets a smoother tracking shot.
And for all the people who are like really are into film, they could be like, it's called a dolly. We know it's called a dolly, but we're making our own, okay?
Yeah, and it's also way cheaper than buying a finished one. Like,
Absolutely.
they're like $300, and it's not like a small one. It's like a full size like.
And that's the thing is like use what you got, you know, use your resources. If you have the ability to like make a makeshift one, and it's not like that big a deal, do it.
Or if it's not that ratchet, like.
Yeah, I mean we're making it pretty cool. It's gonna be modular. We'll be able to take it apart and make it portable. It's gonna be really fun.
It's coming out a lot better than I expected it to be.
Yeah, we got one part of it done that looks great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's cool. So we have a lot of things in work, as far as the studio in general, not just the Life Podcast.
Absolutely.
So there'll be plenty more content for all of our fans. So definitely be on the lookout for it.
Yeah. And if you guys have any ideas for us in the future, just go to thelifepodcastshow@gmail.com and send us an email with any questions about what we're doing on the side or anything you'd think that would be a good fit for us. Throw it in there, and we'll definitely read it and get back to you, and we'll let you know what we think. But
And rate the podcast. That's the best way to get other
Rate
people to talk and talk to people about it. We word of mouth is the best way for this to grow as of right now. So tell your friends, tell your family.
Yeah.
Rate the podcast if you can on whatever podcast platform you have, and we really appreciate it because that brings us higher in the algorithms when people search for things that shows us.
I noticed YouTube's algorithm, like once we had like episode 1 or 2 up, we weren't like a heavy hitter. Like it didn't really come up if you searched The Life Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we have 7 or 8 or not, actually Well,
Today's
We have
7.
6. Today's 7. Yeah.
Today's 7.
Yeah.
So even with the repertoire of 6, like all of a sudden we're starting to really appear at the top now when you search THElife because of the volume
Mhm.
And the time too, the time frame. Like the fact that we're putting up so quickly in time gives us more consistency credit there, and then also it's rather still pretty new and we're still uploading, so it is going to keep us up there for a little bit. So that's really cool. So great work.
Yeah, absolutely. As much as I was having this conversation with my parents, as much as we do enjoy the YouTube views, the podcast platform is really the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you prefer either one, please prefer the podcast, like physically listening to it on a podcast platform.
And it's officially on iTunes too. So
Yes.
if you prefer to listen to it on iTunes, you can go on there, or whatever it is, Apple Podcasts, I think it's called.
Yep.
So yeah, we're on there too. So we're pretty much everywhere at this point that we can physically think of.
Yeah, Overcast, Spotify. Pandora is the only one that is a private platform. So we're working on that, getting that up.
All right. Yeah. Cool. That's been awesome.
Anything else about the studio? If we want to give some studio news, a little bit of insider information.
I don't know. This is coming out next Monday. I don't think we're gonna have anything concrete yet for any special projects, but stuff is in the works.
Yeah.
We got plenty going on.
It's been really fun. I've been having a lot of fun putting stuff together with you guys, and even like just being able to use other talents that I'm not really don't really get to utilize all
Your
the time.
acting talents.
Oh yeah, I walked across that living room like a star.
Shantae. What do they say there? Sachet Shantae.
So I don't know.
I don't know. Some kind of model term.
I'm just saying, if anybody wants to nominate me for an Oscar, I will not deny.
Yeah.
How are we gonna spin this into neural networks?
No, but that's really it. Eric was talking about like, oh, I'm so glad that I didn't get to use that I've been getting to use talents that I didn't really focus on to be able to think that I had or cultivate. And so we were talking about neural networks on the last show.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Let's break this down. So neural networks sounds like a really complex topic, because it is, and we're not saying that any of us understand this to its full extent. But even with a basic understanding of what this is and how it works, we can understand really complex interactions in our day-to-day lives. So a neural network is a physical pathway of nodes in our brain, like they're physical wires in our brain, and electricity pulses through them. That's how we have consciousness. That's how we have thoughts. That's how we have memories. That's how we have all of these things. And it's physically created every time we interact with something. So your memories are stored in physical cables in your brain. That's basically what this boils down to.
Yep.
It's so much easier to explain when you have like visual representation, which we don't have. So we could definitely it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But if you guys could picture just like getting from point A to point B, and it travels through your mind and it goes through these nodes. So it tries to get to whatever it's going the fastest way possible, which is why you can move your hand so quickly when you think about it, because it's already got those established neural pathways that go right to it. There's no real thought process there. But when you start doing something new, like tapping your head and rubbing your belly, that's a different process. So your brain takes a little bit longer to get there because it doesn't do that often. So hopefully that can kind of
there are also different parts of your brain in charge of different aspects. There's a portion of your brain dedicated to movement. There's a portion of your brain dedicated to long-term and short-term thoughts, and a bunch of different things. Bodily functions, that's a different part of the brain. It's a very complex system, but we're going to touch on a very specific portion of this concept, which is the path of least resistance.
Yeah. Wow.
No. So that's what the concept. So we were talking Friday about the concept of positive thoughts versus negative thoughts. The idea that if you continually say negative thoughts, you will automatically reach for negative thoughts subconsciously. So this is based off of the same concept as rogue memorization. Back when you were in middle school and you were learning spelling, and you just continually said the same spelling again and again and again and again, and you learned it, quote unquote learned it. What you did was you created a neural pathway, and you enforced that neural pathway by pushing electricity through it again and again and again. Because the more you use something, the longer and the deeper the connection is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you have rogue memorization. It's so interesting because it's like as soon as you stop utilizing it, it also dissolves.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're not continually using something, it's going to go away, and if you continue to do something, it gets stronger. That's the basic outline.
Yeah.
So something that we need to put on the table too to really bring this thing into perspective is thoughts are real. A lot of people be like, oh, I can't control what I'm thinking about, or they actually have no substantial value. Like a thought doesn't hold any weight, but thoughts are real things, and they occupy mental real estate in your mind. Your brain. There was a study saying like the human brain's always growing, and experts would say that it would take like 300 million years of life, or like 300 some odd. It was like some exuberant number. You'd have to live that long to be able to fill your brain, if you could. But the thoughts that we have, they do occupy mental space within our brains. And as we think and we choose what we're thinking about, we're building genetic structures in our brain. Benji was talking about neurons and how electronic signals will pass through those neurons. Our brain is growing always. It's always adding cells. That's one part in our body that always regenerates daily, every second. And you can see those neurons, they tend to get stronger as you travel down them. It's just like the more beaten path. If you start walking down a trail in the woods, if you keep walking the same way, or if you walk on the carpet and you always walk the same direction back and forth, you're gonna wear out a spot in that carpet. It's the same with our neurons. I mean, except you're not wearing it out. You're just strengthening that connection. So we can see that you're building up that street within your brain. So say, okay, I think every single day that I'm going to be a success. That is going to be the strongest thing. And when your brain gets idle, you will default to, I'm going to be a success. Or you have these successful thoughts, or you have these daydreams that you continually daydream about. The minute you go idle, you're going to travel the same beaten path that you've always traveled. On a little rabbit hole. That's why some people, like, they can't seem to be alone, or they can't seem to be quiet. And they always have to be audibly stimulated by something else so that they're distracted. So they don't end up traveling that bad neural pathway that they've created over X and X time.
Absolutely, because your brain requires a certain level of noise. So if you've ever noticed where certain people tap their foot when they're thinking of something, or they're just passively just sitting there, they tap their foot, or they like move their fingers, or they play songs in their head. You know, there's different ways to cope with this. Your brain creates a certain level of noise, and if it doesn't have any of those physical attributes, it starts to create thoughts. And it like fills your thoughts with something, and that's like a level of noise. And when it uses that level of noise, it goes for the strongest pathway, because electricity, just by the laws of physics, goes with the path of least resistance. So if your brain is going to send an electrical signal, it's going to send an electrical signal to the thickest wire, because that's going to be the path of least resistance. And if you continually say negative things over yourself, or if you continually say positive things over yourself, those are going to be the paths that the brain takes when it's generating random noise.
Something else to rightly define while we're trying to unpack this concept, there's a difference between your mind and your brain. Your thoughts and your thought life is completely different from your brain and its structure. And that's why your thoughts can dictate and generate how your brain is formed. I know you're looking at me.
No, I'm looking. Yeah, like, I'm just trying to understand it.
Like, my God, this is crazy, but it's so true, and that's so important. Have you ever thought, like, some people fall into this common misconception, like, oh, I can't control what I'm thinking about, when you absolutely can control what you're thinking about, and you can positively reinforce. When a thought pops into your brain, you have like this minute window to be able to take that thought into captivity, and either accept it and receive it, and then it will build that neural pathway, or you can reject it and answer that back with something that that you've disciplined yourself to think about.
Yeah, like an affirmation of some sort. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because a lot of people fall into that trap of, like, you know, I've always thought this way, so I can't change it. This is how my mind works. And it's very, like, it's unbelievable how strong your mind actually is. Like, it's unbelievable how, like, if you truly think something, your body will react. You know, if you truly believe that you are not like, I'm not saying obviously if your leg is broken, your leg is broken, but like if you have like we were talking about a few weeks back, like that cancer patient who
Exactly.
who like there was the one that accepted the fact that they were dying and then they died, and then the one person that was like they believed that they were fine, and their body reacted to the way their mind acted. Your mind is so strong; it has like so much power over your body. So these neural pathways you can use this kind of knowledge to your advantage, understanding that if you can reaffirm your mind into positive thinking and to get like that's just your go-to, you know what I mean? It takes time to build that, but if you go ahead,
in theories in medical science, they talk about that term being neuroplasticity, neuro being your brain and plasticity meaning being able to shape your brain, that your thoughts and your mind, now this is the difference between mind and brain, your thoughts and your mind will be able to shape your brain, your neural pathways.
Yeah.
And there's another term called neurogenesis, and that's because your brain is always regenerating, there's always new space for you to cultivate and to be able to shape. So you have those two concepts working together, that neurogenesis working hand in hand with the plasticity, meaning, okay, well, my brain is always new, so I always have a new opportunity to shape the course of my actions, my thoughts. I know this is really heavy.
This is a very large topic, but the example that comes to mind is the concept of gymnastics. The idea that any random person doesn't just go and jump on the high bars and do all of the stunts and everything like that, but it's a process that's learned over time. You know, this is building off of the same concept, but let's remove the neurological aspect of it for now with the concept of muscle memory, where it's like, I'm going to go do this thing, and there are people who do gymnastics very easily now because they've spent 10, 15 years doing it. And it's like, it's a process, and it's a creation of the understanding of that subject, and that's anything. Like, you've been at a job, if you've been at a job for a week, you're not going to understand how to do the thing, but if you've been at the same job for 20 years, you understand the concept, and you understand how to do it with your eyes closed.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
Or even thinking about using like a program and tabbing through a program, like you don't even have to look at the screen. You could be able to move through all the different fields, and you know exactly what you're inputting in each box because.
Yeah, muscle memory is based off of this concept too, where your brain clicks into this set of actions. It's kind of like an assembly line where like your brain goes into the state of, we're doing this thing now. Okay, run through the sequence, and then it just bang, 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 and then it's done. And think of like driving home. Have you ever gotten into like when you're driving home late at night and you go into like this lucid state and then you wake up and you're in your driveway? Your brain has gone through the motions of driving for that whole period of time. That's muscle memory too, which is actually really dangerous. But
it's extremely dangerous. I've done that way too many times.
but that concept also builds from this neurological pathway with the path of least resistance.
All right, so breaking this down to a very, very, very basic level now. Basically, what you think about is what's going to determine the outcome. If you think positively, like, yes, I can do it, you will do it. But if you physically think that I can't do it, you have as you think.
And the more you think positively, you will think more positively. It's a circular system. So it's like, if you think negatively, those negative pathways will be more prevalent, so they will be caused to happen more often. If you think positively, those will be the stronger pathways, and you will think more positively.
So we have good news and bad news. If you're struggling with really stinking thinking, if you're struggling with depression, if you're struggling with these really negative thoughts that come all the time, it's going to be very hard to break. That's the bad news. But good news is it is reversible. I am a product of that.
Yeah.
I had such I was actually diagnosed psychotic for a period of time under some kind of drug-induced psychosis. I don't have time to really get into.
Yeah, we're gonna dive back into that when we come back from the break.
all my backstory, but I really had some mental pathways and some neural pathways and thought processes that were destroying my life.
Yeah,
and it came with a lot of fighting, a lot of positive reinforcement, a lot of thinking about what I was thinking.
Yeah,
to be able to see like, oh, I understand what that thought is, and I understand what emotions and things those thoughts generate. So I need to consciously replace it when I encounter those thoughts.
And when we come back from the break, the idea of the concept of our minds being addicted to certain chemicals and being addicted to concepts is very important, and we'll discuss that when we get back.
This is so much stuff to talk about, but stay tuned.
Generated really what it comes down to is your brain is a drug addict, and that's really what it is. It's like the concept of.
Can you say the word again? There was we got dopamine,
dopamine, serotonin, and neonepinephrine.
Neonepinephrine. Jeez.
That's
Adrenaline.
Okay. Yeah.
No.
Say that 10 times fast.
Okay, I might be pronouncing it wrong because the of course Latin, but nonetheless, there's three. What it really boils down to is there's three chemicals in your brain that control the type of electrical or the quality of electrical signals, or it affects your emotions basically.
Yeah.
That's what these chemicals do, and different combinations of amounts cause different things. So a lot of one will cause depression. A combination will cause happiness. The emotions for love. We have very clear examples of the different combinations of these chemicals that create emotions. And your brain very quickly gets addicted to these chemicals. Addicted is the easiest phrase to use. And it will, if it gets addicted to something, it will utilize the easiest way to get those chemicals. And this is a very large overview of a very complex part of neuroscience, is the concept of like your brain needing these chemicals, but it also produces them, so it lets itself have a certain amount. And when you they say about heroin, I believe it's heroin that just dumps all of it into your brain. And it's either heroin or methamphetamine, one of the two. But what it does is these drugs, they take you get an influx of everything. So your brain just says dump all of it, and it dumps all of it into your brain, and it feels amazing, but then you have none of it for a certain amount of time until it replenishes. And we do that sometimes with our actions and our thoughts and the way that we do things, because if your brain is addicted to a certain type of chemical and a certain type of thinking causes that chemical to happen, your brain is going to default to that type of thinking so that it gets the chemicals.
Or even think about just something that's so relevant to society around us now, the dopamine that's released from the flashing lights on your phone. I mean, that's something huge, and where that plays a big part in social media addiction and screen time addiction, because you're actually releasing chemicals within your brain and becoming a mental drug addict, and your brain begins to associate those thoughts, those muscle memories, and those neural pathways to picking up the phone, defaulting, and muscle memorying to Snapchat because of all the lights and colors. Or notifications, because it brings that instant gratification of dopamine. It's like, oh, I have to check for a notification. That little red dot is going to give me a little boost of happiness.
I mean, how many times have y'all found yourself like you were on something else, like you meant to go on your phone for something, and then before you know it, you're scrolling through Facebook.
Yep.
Like that's like real, and it's like your mind kind of just changes your way real quick just to kind of get that little fix that it was looking for. So that's a really great concept. I think you explained that really well, Benji.
Well, the most thank you,
Eric.
But the most common example for all of you who are like, I'm not addicted to my phone. Those flashy lights have nothing to do with me. When was the last time you went to a casino?
Yeah.
Casinos are based off of this concept.
Yep. Absolutely.
The flashing lights, the bright lights. Why do you think neon is so prevalent? Because it's unnatural. First of all, it's an unnatural type of light. It's flashy. It's colorful. Your brain is like overloaded with like, what is this fancy thing? It's like that's
it's lights, the sounds, everything about it. It's all like created in a way to be chemically inducing for anybody who walks in. That's like attractive, like ooh, and then and there's a reason why there's no windows in a casino, so you don't know what time it is. You know what I mean? They don't have any clocks in there either.
Yep.
Yeah. So everything is built in a way so that it can trip your chemical reactions, so you can spend more money there, and they'll even bring you free drinks if you're there long enough. So like
releasing some more chemicals,
which also inhibits other concepts. And we've distilled all of those things. Everybody understands that gambling addictions are real. Everybody understands that alcoholic addictions are real and drug addictions are real. But we completely disregard the other psychological aspects, which are our telephones and our media devices.
Yeah.
It's like the phone that you're using to listen to this podcast right now, you may very well have an addiction to this device. If you got rid of your phone for 2 weeks, how would your life change? Would you be able to do it?
Yeah. I mean, once I put down my phone, like legitimately, like I found so much time in my life that I didn't know I had.
Or even just imagine going back to a time where you had just like a simple Nokia phone where it's like, okay, you can get a text message, you can make a phone call. That's all my phone is good for. Oh, I'm gonna whip it out and play Snake for a minute. Like that's the end of the day.
Or even like I'll date myself a little bit with the sidekick sitting in class. I used to be able to flip the thing and type my text messages out and look eye contact with whoever's teaching and not even look at my phone and type out complete sentences.
See, I wasn't that cool. Well, I was a different type of cool in that era because I always had Nextels. But you never had a keyboard, so it was like you had to memorize 33333 11 2222222. Then you have to go all the way around the block if you miss the
bonus points. Whoever emails us what that would have spelled out.
The sidekicks were awesome. I love sidekicks. I never owned one, but I loved looking at them.
Yeah,
they were really
me
cool.
neither. But yeah,
they were satisfying.
You were definitely cool if you had a sidekick.
Yeah. There was something that I was for all of you who when we gave you the 2-week challenge of not using your phone, everybody who's all like, I only use my phone for phone calls. Go to Walmart, buy a $20 flip phone, put your SIM card in it, and see if you really use it for phone calls.
Yeah,
it's like that's a serious test.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I would willingly do that.
I don't think I could.
I would love to, but I don't have any other technological device to be able to accomplish what I need to accomplish. So,
and it's one of those things like
that's my scapegoat.
Yeah,
it's one of those. Like I was talking to my brother the other day, and I was pouring a cup of coffee, and he was like, "Yeah, I never really got into coffee," but he he was about to indulge in one of his things that he uses, and it's like one of those things where no.
Damn. I wonder how this show is going to actually communicate. We might have to do the whole entire next show.
Yeah.
Just clarifying and redoing what we did in this show today. Anyways,
but it was like one of those things where I just acknowledged it. Like everyone kind of has their thing. Everyone has like their poison essentially. Yeah. And like I'm addicted to coffee. I'll admit that. As I stutter through
it's
that.
It's not addiction if you don't stop.
It's never. Yeah, you're not addicted if you don't stop. Absolutely.
But it's one of those things like where you choose to spend your own where you spend your time in life.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like video games, TV, shopping. All these things can become dopamine and serotonin and whatever that other word was spikes. Yeah. So that your body becomes your mind becomes addicted to those things. So you'll feel like you have to do them. So it's a matter of picking your poison. We're not saying cut everything out. We're just saying become aware of it, so that when if you know it's there and you're aware of it, you can start to kind of regulate and control how much of it time it's taking from you. Because you have to understand, the time is the most valuable resource to getting to your dreams. And if you're spending all this extra time following habits that are from 2 years ago or more, and you can't break them, but you don't know why you don't have enough time at the end of the day and why you're always so exhausted, well, you're using all your dopamine early on in the morning before you even get out of bed because you spent an hour and a half scrolling through Facebook.
The core word that you said was habits. And our brain creates very weird parallels. So there was this guy called Polyakov back in the day who did an experiment with dogs. Every time he fed the dogs, he rang a bell. And one day, after months of doing this, he rang the bell and the dogs just came running. And you might be thinking, I'm smarter than a dog. I saw this done on a human. I saw this done on a... They did an experiment where they put a Sour Patch Kid on his keyboard. And every time he picked it up, they rang a bell. And even though the person actively knew something was up, after months of doing this, the guy walks in the room, one of my friends hits the bell, and he looks at his keyboard. And it's like, the brain creates these pathways, and it's like, that's a really funny example. I'm going to do that to my coworkers. That's probably not okay. But but the concept is like...
If you do, please film it.
Yeah, if you do, please film. But the concept is that your brain will create paths, connections that we don't understand. So if you act in a certain way and you receive an attention
that your brain notices, or if you do something in a certain way and your brain gets a chemical that it's not expecting, it creates a correlation between those two things. And it says, if I just do this again, I'll get that again.
Right. So like you said, creating negative neural pathways like destructive behaviors. Oh, if I throw a temper tantrum, I will get the reaction that I need so that I can get the attention that I'm looking for.
You see this a lot in small children, especially because in developmental stages they're trying to find correlations between everything.
Yeah.
So if your child screams and you pay attention to it, it's going to know that every time it screams, it can get your attention.
Yeah.
And that like you think, okay, but that's only with children. But how many times do you do it too?
Yep. This is good.
And that's like we think of these like psychological concepts as these high and mighty psychological concepts, but it's like think of like food ads. Food you won't be hungry. You'll watch a food ad and they'll like subconsciously tell you to go buy food.
It's worked on me.
It's worked on all of us.
Well, think about things now like subliminal messaging or subliminal advertising, or even what do we call that as filmmakers? Iconography. Being able to correlate or how do I put language to this? Being able to provide undertones and convey messages and feelings just by objects and colors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had this conversation just the other day about clothing and how the clothing can portray, so especially on film, like striped shirts on film portrayed this sense of like rebellion and against the grain. And so like whenever you see like any movie with like what's the Problem Child, how he wore like the striped shirt throughout the whole movie, and it's like those, whenever you see like the striped shirt, it's like a subconscious thing in your mind that relates it to rebellion. You know, so those are the type of things when you're creating something. You know, and I think it's that, what was the word?
Iconography.
Iconography. Jesus, big words today.
not neoepinephrine or whatever it was, or neural pathways, but iconography.
The thing is, like, people who are listening to this right now might be saying, like, oh, like, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but think of it in the simplest way. Have you ever watched a movie and all of a sudden it goes dun 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 dun? Dun, 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 dun. And you know that something's coming. You've been programmed. Programmed is the easiest word to know that when those sounds happen, something is going to happen. And it's like there's nothing wrong with those sounds. Like if we hadn't been programmed to understand that means that something's going to happen, we would just listen to the music and be like, oh, this is an interesting song, I guess. But now we understand when that song starts, you know, it starts to get your heartbeat because you're waiting for it. You're waiting for it, and then it gets faster and faster and faster, and your heartbeat goes with the fastness. And it's like, why does it do that? Because we've been programmed to understand that that's what that means. There are so many like different explanations we could give for this. There's so many different examples. Like our day-to-day lives are based off of this concept of your brain gets used to patterns and it doesn't like when those patterns change. It doesn't like when those patterns change. Our brains are very, very aggressive when we try to change things.
And that's why what Tyler was saying earlier, it's very hard to break negative mindsets.
Oh, especially when you're already in the hole, it just gets exponential. And it takes a lot of physical and mental courage to be able to push against the things that are so easy or so natural. When people be like, oh, you know, my brain defaults to this depressing thought, or this way, or I've always been like this, or this has always been who I am as my mental thought life. I don't know how to develop this appropriately right now. So maybe we'll have to get back into this after the break.
Absolutely. After the break, we're also going to talk about the steps to take to actually implement this in your life, because companies and organizations already do this in the negative way for you to buy stuff, but you can apply this in your day-to-day life to fix issues that you have. It's not going to be easy, but it is very possible.
Absolutely.
So
well, stay tuned.
Bringing this all around town. Bring it around town.
Bring it up. All right, I'm not going to do it.
If everybody had that visual right now.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
That's the things dreams are made of. Okay, so the practical application side of talking about neural pathways, and thank you for sticking around this entire time to be able to digest what we have said so far.
Yeah.
The beauty about a podcast is you can go back and listen to it. And I hope that we explained everything well in this. And if not, well, we could probably revisit it tomorrow, or not tomorrow, the next show.
Yeah.
But practical application. So we build neural pathways within our brain. Our brain's made up of neurons. What we think about, our memories, our thoughts, their physical substance within our brain. We have like a 2-minute window to be able to accept or reject the thoughts that come to our brain to be able to build those neural pathways. There's a conscious and active decision to be able to think about what you're thinking about. And once you're aware and your eyes are open to that concept, you can manually override and be able to create those paths. It's like walking through the woods, or if you had just an empty plot of land with trees and everything. I mean, we live in the Northeast here, so it's a deciduous forest. You have a regular plot of land, 1 acre, and you need to get from one side to the next. You can try to find the path of least resistance, and you will zigzag around all kinds of trees and go every which way until maybe you get to the other side.
Yep.
But if you're clear and intentional on going as direct as you can to the next side, to the other place, your end goal, it might take a lot of resistance. It might take a lot of work to be able to make a clean path. But as you make that path will become easier trodden. It will become more broken in, more worn in. You'll be able to remove the trees that are in your way, or the debris, the things that will stop you from physically walking straight ahead. And that's the same thing with our minds. If we have the propensity to think one way and say, okay, I want to accomplish this goal. I want to be this great musician, but then I let my mind wander, and whatever the path of least resistance is, like just becoming passive in our thought life, maybe I might be able to get to point B as a musician, but it might take me 20 years longer, or I may never get there because I'll get lost and end up going left instead of going straight or right.
Yeah.
I hope this communicates.
No, that actually does. I really like the analogy used there with the forest and cutting through. You have to be intentional with the like where you want to get to too. You know, you want to pick. You definitely want to find like going the shorter way, making your own path is the most resistance. But the only reason why you're going to do that is because you're going to travel on this road often, you know, because you want to get to the other side and back multiple times. But understand that it's going to take multiple passes through that to really get it to be less resistant, so you can just get to it faster.
Especially if you don't have the tools.
Especially if you don't have the tools. And if you're doing this on your own, it's going to take a lot more discipline to stay to it, because at any point you can take one of the already cleared out routes that have been cleared out over the last 30 years of your life.
Right. And you find things, just using that forest analogy, you find things, if you walk through uncharted woods, it has been charted before. There are things like deer trails and animal trails and things that are easier to go through, but they are erratic. They're scattered.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be able. They talk about having a compass when you go to the woods. It's like, okay, you want to go north, you head as north as possible in a straight line as possible.
Yep.
It's if you get stuck on something that's already been pre-trodden and that's erratic, you'll end up getting sidetracked to the left, sidetracked to the right, and you'll end up going northeast, or you'll end up going east. Or if you're really just unconscious in which way you're going and you're disoriented, you can start heading in the opposite direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eventually.
And that's kind of like, I know we're talking about a forest and all this, and a lot of people probably haven't even been to a forest. And if you haven't, please go visit a forest. But
get some sun, vitamin D.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by our national parks.
And that's the intro.
Okay. That was good. Anyways, but yeah, so I lost my train of thought on that one. So to bring this home, like this completely revolves around your own life. Like what decisions you make. If your go-to is to just, you know, you get home from work and you're stressed, so your go-to is play a video game, or your go-to is just like binge watch Netflix for the weekend. You know, those things are your go-tos. And yes, it is harder to do something productive. Yes, I understand that, you know, maybe I'd rather do this versus I don't know, make a song or something that I say is make a song because that's my life. But like whatever it is in your life that's more productive, like start the business. Yes, that's very intimidating to do. And if you can replace that with a quick dopamine fix of, turning on a video game, then I understand why that's so easy. But it's that path less traveled, the path that you have to work for, the conscious, disciplined decision to make that shorter cut to where you want to go, which is to start the business.
Getting back to the neuroscience side, just so we don't fall into like muscle memory or just like those conscious decisions like that, disciplined, directed, and deep thought, like conscious thought, is how to be able to retrain your brain. And it's the same with those physical habits like you're talking about. I made the decision years ago. I want to do the most profitable thing possible at pretty much every given moment. To the best of my ability. And my first thing was, okay, I'm going to remove screen fixes so that I default to a different action rather than sitting down and getting sucked into watching TV for hours on end or a screen on end. I'll get forced into something productive like either read or create beautiful music. And it's like, okay, so now I'm reprogramming myself, and you get itchy, like, oh, like I just want to sit down and watch TV for the first week or 2 or 3. It takes 21 days to build a good habit. I'm sure it probably takes about 21 days or so of conscious, deep, directed thought to be able to retrain your neural pathways to think in a certain way. But you guys understand what I'm trying to...
It really boils down to that your brain is really lazy, if it can be. So if your brain has the opportunity, if it knows, oh, if I get to watch an hour of TV every day, I can just use all of my chemicals on that hour of the day, so I don't have to do the rest of the work that I normally do. Think of it as caffeine. Your body produces caffeine naturally. But if you drink coffee every day, your brain understands that it doesn't need to produce caffeine because I'm going to get caffeine. That's why you get caffeine headaches when you don't drink coffee. The same concept.
It's your body throwing a temper tantrum.
It is. It's your body saying, well, I don't produce anymore because you give it to me all the time. So why should I do the work that I don't have to do? That's what your brain is doing when you fall into these depressive cycles or whatever. So what you have to do is you have to retrain it just like you would retrain your body with coffee. So if you're going to stop drinking coffee, the way you do that is you don't just decide that I'm going to stop drinking 8 cups of coffee a day and go to 0. You have to slowly cut down. So if you have an addiction towards screen time, if you have an addiction towards television, if you have an addiction towards being depressed, you have to slowly ramp that thing back. And when I say you would be addicted to being depressed, I mean addiction to that depressive cycle. Because people do get depressed like chemically, and they cause themselves to get deeper into depression.
We were talking about that kind of during one of the breaks. We were just trying to see how much out of me we could pull, and I really can identify with being addicted to depression, where I would forcefully induce myself to think on those painful memories and things that I had experienced or went through, or just the emotions of like things like hopelessness and rejection, and it would produce that level of pain, which would bring some kind of dopamine or some kind of rush. So it misery loves company kind of deal, where you're so miserable that it actually brings some kind of feeling, so that's the only thing that you feel, and you're numb to everything else.
Yeah, you think of the concept of cutting. This is the same concept. It's like, if you think of it from a purely logical perspective, the brain shouldn't want to hurt itself. But the concept of like you cutting a piece of your skin, that releases a chemical reaction. And the idea of, if I just keep cutting my skin, it will continually release that chemical reaction. And that's what the brain gets addicted to. That's why a lot of people cut themselves. Or that's the psychological reason behind it. It's like, if the brain knows that there was
the physiological,
the concept was explained to me as the sense of, if a robot is told to make a human smile, it will tell it jokes for the first amount of time, but eventually it will realize that the easiest way to do it is just to physically make the person smile. To physically grab their lips and make them smile. And that sounds like a really dystopian explanation, but the concept is the same with the brain. That the brain wants to do it the correct way, but if it can be lazy about how it does things, it will be lazy about how it does things. So you have to force your brain to do it the correct way.
All right, so 2 of these show notes that we have here on the table. By deep intellectual thinking, we can change our brains with our mind, and the way that we think will drive our brain, and our brain will respond to how it is working. I just want to create like really deep thought about that.
The brain actively responds to the stimuli it's given. That's all that it does. So you give a brain stimuli, outward.
We're talking about the
physical brain.
the physical brain of itself.
Exactly. So it takes in electrical signals and it outputs electrical signals. That's all that the brain does. And your consciousness is based off of those electrical signals. So if we change how we input those electrical signals, we can change the output directly. So it's like you can't change the rules of the game. You can't change chess, but you can change how you play chess. And that's really what it boils down to, is the idea that if I can't change the output, to change the output, I have to change the input.
Yeah, you can't produce something that's not in. You can't give something that you haven't received, and that's the difference between like positive begets positive, negative begets negative.
So tips to break cycles. What do you guys recommend?
We got 4 minutes.
This is plenty of time. So yeah,
tips to break cycles, definitely be conscious. Now, hopefully your eyes are open to be able to say, "Oh, wow, I can think about what I'm thinking about," or I consciously know that this is negative, and I need to begin to cultivate positive mindsets. Even if you start it as rogue, you don't feel anything. You think that like, oh, this is trash, and it's contrary to the truth. You begin to build that truth to say, no, like I am happy. I'm a success. I'm intelligent. You begin to speak those things into existence and speak those neural pathways into existence, so that eventually it's easier to travel and default to those rather than like, oh, like my life's a failure, or I'm nothing, or I'm depressed, or I'm tired, or I'm sick.
Create small productive tasks. Small, really, really, really small. Really small. Like, I'm going to fold a pair of socks and put it away. And reward yourself mentally for that action. If you're at that level, if you're at the level of like complete depression, that's the step one. Say, I'm going to fold a pair of socks. That psychological concept of you achieved something that you set out to do is massive. And you just train your brain. First week, do 1 pair of socks a day. Week 2, do 2. Then do 4. Then do 8. And just continue to motivate yourself in that small little way. Say, I'm going to put 1 box of the groceries in the cupboard. Doing small little things. And if you're like, I do that all the time, then ramp it up based off of your level. If you do that already, but you have another problem that you can't face, like let's say like you're like, oh, I got to wash my car. I hate washing my car. I hate cleaning my car. Take 1 piece of garbage out of your car. Or clean 1/4 of your car. Just create bite-sized achievements for yourself. Yeah. And that's a great step towards achieving your goal.
Yeah, my advice is it's not for someone who's at the bottom. This is definitely someone who's, just in a negative mindset, and they can't start. I would say take inventory of the people in your life and surround yourself by people who are in the more positive aspect of where you want to be, and let those people be guidelines for you, so you can, because we emulate the people around us. So be conscious of the people in your life, and if you're in that negative place, it might be because you have negative people close to you, and that's just their neural pathways. Don't let someone else's habits become your habits.
It's true. And when we were talking earlier, we were kind of talking about the forest, we got sidetracked, but I had this thing. You have to be able to create a guideline for yourself to be able to get to where you need to go. Okay, so you're trying to plot a path, and you're trying to get there as direct as you can, and this pathway is north. You need to be able to know that there has to be some kind of moral compass or spiritual compass that gets you to that north. That pathway to be able to get into that positive mindset. Or like you can't just get there without knowing how to go. Yeah. So surround yourself with those people who know how to get there. And we'll definitely divulge more into that eventually.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's big. Get there without knowing how to go. It's direction. It's that structure, and it's having the ability to do so.
I say listen to this podcast again, because this is a lot of information, and this is a lot of deep concepts for everyday life that I think all of us can apply in an area of our life or another.
And you better believe that we definitely review our podcasts, and we listen to them, and we heed the things that we're talking about. This is an empty concept. Hopefully we can bring this back around, and maybe we might have to revisit some things in the near future.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's the ducks.
Thank you for listening to the Life Podcast Show. We really appreciate all your support. We meet every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning just to talk and share our perspectives on everyday life situations. If you haven't already, please share this with your friends and give them a chance to join the conversation. Also, if you liked what you heard today, rate our podcast. The higher the rating, the longer we can keep this going. And a special thanks to our future sponsors that will soon partner with us on this journey. If anyone would like to contact us, please email us at thelifepodcastshow@gmail.com. One word. That's thelifepodcastshow@gmail.com. Be blessed and have a wonderful day.